Welcome to the BioTalk Unzipped podcast, where we unzip the stories behind medical progress by sharing the latest and greatest advances in biopharmaceuticals and medical technologies in a fun, entertaining, and enlightening format. And now your co-hosts, Gregory Austin and Dr. Chad Briscoe. So Chuck, let's talk about some of the steps that you and Zealic have taken to overcome impediments to faster and easier drug development to clinical and commercial settings. You've mentioned that it's good to avoid that Mona Lisa syndrome. Not everything's a snowflake, but how do you adapt to what is unique?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, the way we adapt to what's unique is to really pull out what ultimately is, if you would, the common denominator of the nature of patient engagement. I say nature, what do I mean by that? I mean, if the purpose is for disease education, as an example, well, I recognize that, from disease to disease, from brand to brand, or, drug to drug, both the patient population, the content, the areas of emphasis are going to be different. To personalize it, it's going to need to be able to adapt depending on the individual's situation through, their healthcare journey. And really what we've done is first and foremost start with kind of building blocks, Legos, if you will. Okay. And except for Legos are rigid and software isn't. And so we have this very, very powerful library that has these building blocks that we start with that really allow us to then first assemble a digital experience that it's going to serve the purpose based on the expertise of the biotech brand managers and their experts. And then once we've assembled it, we then can tweak it and adjust it and configure it and alter it in a way that makes it more precise to what it is that particular drug is looking to do, the disease is looking to be able to handle. And then on top of that, we then are able to then create a fairly complex journey experience so that as a patient interacts with the digital experience or the interpersonal, like a nurse call center who is providing support to the patient, which we now are aware of, right? Through all of that, we're able to actually lay out an adaptive journey so that depending on the person's interaction with, all aspects of the disease education, it adjusts how it interacts with you. You may prefer, for example, I want an app and I want to do all of my interactions on the app. Somebody else may prefer, I want to actually interact more interpersonally. And, by learning how that is for each individual and then adjusting how we drive the interaction with them digitally or facilitating the nurses to contact them more frequently, you could now adapt to a individual's personal interactive needs, as well as learning more about their health. And even, if, and this is all driven based on, our customers, the biopharma's decisions, but if we want to evaluate them emotionally, right? How are they feeling? How, anything making you nervous, any of that, if that's what they'd like to do, we can incorporate that in and alter how we interact with them. And so we can do that in many different ways. It could be for the purposes of a, visit schedule for a clinical trial. And, this is a subject that wants to participate, but they're in a remote area. And, and therefore the trial will allow some virtual visits, or to instigate, they may not have a car. And it would actually integrate with like Uber, for example, and help them get a ride if they had to go to the doctor. And all of that is based on these building blocks that we're able to assemble and then press a button and it's live, right? There's no, well, we'll build it and I'll come back to you 4 months later. everything moves, well, frankly, in lightning speed compared to what everybody's used to in the industry.
Nice. It sounds like this would have great applications in decentralized trials. And are you seeing an increase in amount of kind of your business in that space?
A little bit, but our focus right now, and for the 8.5 years we've been doing what we're doing, and have essentially evolved this offering, has actually been more. It has been more in the commercial side, right? And I, simply because there's Chad, you know this quite well, right? The clinical trial, right? Technology and clinical trial, it's very crowded, right? And there's a lot of solutions out there, and still could use some help. I mean, for sure.
Yeah.
But honestly, as in a smaller business, you want to go where the space is still more open. And on the commercial side, for us, there is a very big need still. There are fewer solutions like this out there, or even close to it, regardless of how they implement it. It is very painful. I mean, imagine a patient engagement. Imagine if LinkedIn, the content only updated once every 6 months. How engaging would that be? But that's what they're dealing with, right? I know you laugh, but that's what they're dealing with, because the cycle time is so slow. So that's why the need there is much, much greater. But yes, we where the opportunity is, and more. I actually was just watching another panel on clinical trials through, a variety of people, some from Syneos and Gilead, and they had said that the growth, COVID clearly created this big burst of virtual trials, right? Big burst, right? For a long time, it was trying to get traction. Then COVID came, and then boom, here it is. On the backside of it, things are settling back out. Kind of gone down I don't know if you're seeing this, Chad, but it's kind of gone back down to, in-person visits for the subjects, for sure. Right? But they said that what they're seeing is, now it's coming out of the trough at about a 10% compounding rate every year on decentralized clinical trials. But more than that, it's the virtual visits that are becoming opportunistic, right? As opposed to a full trial running, as a decentralized, trial design. And I think as more and more of that happens, there's going to be a greater need for solutions like ours in that space. But at the moment, the commercial side of the world is keeping us plenty busy. So.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think everybody wants, whatever aspect of life nowadays, post-pandemic, I think hybrid anything makes more sense, right? And that's also speaking to flexibility. So you're talking about a lot of flexibility in your software solutions so that you can meet, the patients and the marketing, needs, or think of the post-marketing, the commercialization needs,
right.
But also when we think about, you mentioned the in-person visits versus the virtual visits. I mean, that's what I do with my physician. I just, I think 4 months ago, I had a virtual visit, and then the follow-up, I'm doing the in-person on just this coming Friday. Right. And I think that's a great balance. And same thing in business, right? I think we do we do a lot of virtual meetings with customers, but we still want to do that face-to-face get together. And we found that maybe more than ever how valuable that is, and didn't even realize it in the past, how lucky we were to be able to do that in this world, in this connected world. You're in Poland, seeing your team there. Right. Some people might ask, "Hey, Chuck, why don't you just meet them? Meet them on Teams or something." But it's just it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Not to really get the work done. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing too that I heard, I attended a conference actually here in London about 3 months ago, LSX, and in the conference it had biotech, med tech, health tech. I mean, it had the full spectrum there. It was very, first time I've ever attended it. It was really, really cool. Plus a bunch of, investors. And as I was talking to some people, one of the things I learned, I didn't know this, maybe you guys did, but the other area that's starting to emerge here in Europe is well, virtual health, right? More so, not only just a televisit, but I mean, after care, after treatment, with organizations that are taking the load off of the clinics and the hospitals and doctors for routine monitoring.
Okay.
Because what would end up happening, I mean, you got a doctor who's taking care of a bunch of patients in the office, and all of a sudden, even through remote monitoring, the blood pressure that the patient took on their own is like spiking, right? And so now the doctor is distracted from having to care for the patient right in front of him, which is probably a chronic illness. And then they have to go check, why is the blood pressure up? You have to be certified, or a nurse, right? Or practitioner. And so instead, they're taking those situations off of the shoulders of the healthcare providers who do it face-to-face. And many times, not always, but many times, it's just simply they didn't know how to take their blood pressure. It was just user error, if you will, right? And so no problem. They make the call. They check them out. How are you feeling? All good, wonderful. Now, obviously, if that's not the case, then, they jump in and arrange for that patient to be seen by the doctor. But it's giving the primary healthcare system capacity that it needs to be able to handle the ever-growing demand of, well, us baby boomers, who obviously, I worked at Hillrom for a little while, and as hospital beds, you pay a lot of attention to the capacity demand in the future to predict what's going to actually happen for your product, right? And it's the volume, and the biggest concern was hospital capacity, right? Even if you had the beds, the capacity was not going to support the demand that us baby boomers are going to place on it. And so that's why this actually caught my attention when they were telling me what was going on here in Europe. I thought it was pretty cool. So.
And compounding that, besides that there's more demand for healthcare needs, there's the reduction of people getting into healthcare. There's almost I don't want to call it a crisis, but there's definitely a nursing deficit in the United States. And that puts so much pressure on the nurses who are at the hospitals or the nursing care facilities, having to do more and see more patients in less time. And in other countries, I heard in Korea as well, they have a deficit in doctors. And so the federal government is looking to incentivize medical schools to get more doctors out. And so it's been a very controversial situation there. So it's really interesting. And so there's anything I think we can do to ease that pain is good.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there's plenty of stats out there that indicate, patients, post-procedure, get them home, but make sure you get them home safe, right? And they're going to recover faster if they recover in the comfort of their home, as long as they're monitored and safe. So, I mean, the more we can do that in a predictable, reliable, and effective way, it's better for everybody, right? And now, obviously, that has a very positive impact to healthcare costs, right? As long as you don't have adverse events and return visits immediately after they depart, right? Which obviously flips it the other way. But I mean, how can it be? It's a good thing all the way around. We just have to master it.
Indeed.
For sure.
Well, it's time once again, gentlemen, for new news.
New news.
New news. In the article, These Microscopic Tunnels Are a Goldmine for New Medicines, published on June 27th of this year by Jacob Bell, it delves into the promising field of ion channel research. Ion channels are proteins embedded in cell membranes that control the flow of electrically charged particles such as sodium, potassium, calcium, and chloride. These channels are critical for numerous bodily functions, including muscle movement, sensory perception, cellular communication, and it makes them prime targets for drug development. For patients, ion channel drugs offer a wealth of benefits. They're used to lower blood pressure, calm seizures, beat back infections, and steady heartbeats. However, ion channels can be very difficult to pinpoint, but with newer technology such as cryo-electron microscopy, they can better identify those proteins. But challenges remain. As Stephen Dworetzky of Biohaven points out, almost every drug program is like a whack-a-mole. You fix one thing, you break something else. Isn't that right? Vertex and Biohaven are at the forefront of this research, exploring treatments for various conditions, including pain, psychiatric disorders, cardiovascular, Alzheimer's, and possibly arthritis. So Chuck and Chad, for either one or both of you, what do you make of this ion channel research? How do you see the future of ion channel research evolving over the next decade? And what major breakthroughs do you anticipate?
Well, I'm gonna toss this one over to you to start, Chad, because this is closer to your expertise and domain than mine. Sure. But it'll be educational as well as I'll be happy to chime in.
Looking at things from a really simple perspective, and Vertex obviously listed in there. Vertex is really the leader in cystic fibrosis research, and for some of the cystic fibrosis patients, it's not a cure, but darn near a cure. And this is a lot of that's been based on this ion channel research. And if we look at, just that as one example of the power of ion channels and the technology and where this can go, and we think about the other diseases that they're now targeting, I think it gives tremendous hope. I think that's where Biohaven is coming to this from, right? They're saying, wow, look at the success Vertex has had. This is an approachable target. Sometimes that's what we see in drug development as we see these targets. I think ion channels have been known for decades, but it was, how do we attack this particular mechanism? And that's what's really interesting in drug development is once one company tackles that approach to a new drug or a new treatment, then there's follow-ons. And it used to be with small molecules, we talk about Me Too drugs, right? Is it somebody come out with one drug and then somebody come out with one that looks almost the same and works kind of the same way. But now I think what we're seeing whole fields and targets and approaches open up. And so it's not so much Me Too drugs, it's more like Me Too approaches, Me Too platforms. And I see this a little bit in that light. It's like when immuno-oncology opened up. It's like when gene therapy started opening up, and now with ion channels, we see Biohaven being a first follower. But I know there are multiple additional companies, and I think as Biohaven has success, and maybe Vertex has more success, and another company has success, it's going to be okay. This is how we do it in this space, and we can really explore it. And so I think that's a new pattern in drug development, which I think is tremendously exciting. That's so that's really that's what I took from this. This is really amazing in that way.
Yeah, I think there's the little I know in comparison to you on the science side, but the one thing that I have seen, and actually we had somebody speak on behalf of some of these treatments, and the logistics of the treatment by itself becomes more challenging if we put it back from the patient's perspective, right? Participating in the clinical trial is a different dynamic, right, than it is for, traditional drug development. And I think is something that still needs to get worked out and simplified. And then on top of that, I mean, the final treatment, once the drug is approved, is also fairly complicated, proving to be very effective, and you're getting closer to curing, not just treating, right, which is wonderful, but also not something that is easy to administer, easy to manage. The interaction and logistics of pulling it off between the healthcare system, the pharmaceutical company and the patient is a much, much bigger challenge at least in what we've seen. I don't know if you're seeing or experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, on the financial side also, where, companies have to get funding. So when they see success, then they're going to start throwing their money in that direction. I was, as you were commenting, I was thinking another, maybe the biggest example right now in this space is the GLP-1 agonist, right? The Ozempics and the Zepbounds and the Mounjaros of the world that are now out there, and second generations and third generations of those drugs coming along. People have known for a long time that there was this mechanism with GLP-1, but it was just not nobody quite figured out how to crack the nut of making it druggable. And as soon as we said, hey, we can hit this target, now it's like a flood, and you know, and I think that's tremendously exciting, you know, for treatments of obesity and weight loss and so many other spaces that some of these drugs are hitting. So yeah, it's very exciting.
I think, you know, people don't really realize that, you know, innovation is not a switch, right? It's an evolution, and it takes time, and it takes, well, it takes increments of learning and discovery and optimizing before you do get to, you know, that burst mode, which is what you're speaking of, right? There's a breakthrough point. And then once you get there, and it's just a lot of people, just because so many people haven't lived through it or been in the mix of it. It's interesting because it's actually why, you know, we always talk about pragmatic innovation, because, you know, it's more important to make incremental forward moving steps that are going to be beneficial to something that is going to be a breakthrough ultimately, than trying to actually get to the breakthrough in one step. And it rarely happens. It rarely happens. This is a very, very exciting area in the world of, well, like, you know, in the world of gene and cell therapies that are being developed.
Yeah, it's a theme. It's a theme that carries through business, and it's getting off a little bit on this new news topic. But you mentioned, you know, making that incremental progress and that pragmatic innovation. You know, one of the things we want to talk to you about a little bit is about leadership, and because you've been such you've been a tremendous leader for so long in many different types of businesses. But one of the things I try to do in my leadership is to just say, hey, just make little steps, right? And it's amazing when you make little steps. If you have a project or a program that's important, just meet on it with the team once a week or once a month or whatever you can make time for, but keep that space. Don't cancel it. Do one thing at every meeting. And after 6 months or a year, you're going to look back and you're going to go, wow, I really made a lot of progress, because, you know, it might be one thing this month, but it might be 3 things next month when you have a little more time. And so it's those little incremental steps you make that add up. So.
It is so true. And I was talking to somebody the other day and on the team, and, you know, we've been doing it for so long. We understand that leadership is not, it doesn't produce instant gratification, right? I mean, it's the biggest challenge of being a leader, right? It takes time. You know, it's like making a diamond, right? It's about time and pressure, right? The right amount of pressure with continued time and the support and the right ingredients, and things happen. And I was trying to explain to them, because, you know, these are people who are, you know, their focus is just on their work, and you know, they'll do something and they'll see the results. And, you know, it's like, and then they get frustrated, like, you know, marketing is a good one, right? You do something, it's weeks or months. And I was trying to explain to them, it's okay. Don't expect, you're not, first of all, the answer is not right in front of you, number one. And number two, right? Like you said, it's just a little bit every time. Put something out there, interact, communicate, right? Guide, adjust, and ultimately, you know, the results will come. And, you know, people just, it's hard for them to realize that. But I think the other thing you know, it's why I'm sitting here, right? I mean, there was you know, back to the whole, you know, the question of Ukraine. I was actually in Ukraine, in Lviv, for almost 6 months during COVID. Because you know, the last plane left, you know, like 6 hours before the airlines were shut down. And my plane was leaving, you know, 9 hours later, and trains stopped everything. I was stuck. So, but, you know, it was the least amount of time that I would travel. And, you know, I travel, sure, you travel for customers and conferences and all these things. But for me, you know, for my team here and in the US, I do it to, to make sure you have that interpersonal interaction, to coach
Yeah.
and mentor, to teach. I mean, the other reason
Yeah.
for zeal is and you guys, Chad, we've done this a long time.
Yep.
I don't want to disappear one day with 40 years of good and bad experiences and not be able to actually allow others to benefit from it personally, right? And so,
Right.
this has been my platform to do that, and to do it personally is and I think that's important as a leader, right? I cook dinner
Yeah.
for everybody. I believe in subservient leadership, right? You're working
Right.
hard. Your job is more important than mine. Mine is not more important to yours. So I'm going to help you. I'm going to support you. If we're
Yeah.
working late,
Yeah.
my Lviv office, I would make, these big Italian dinners, some bottles of wine. We would sit, we'd work late, we'd have dinner, take care of cleaning up, and, let them go home to their families. I believe
Nice.
that that's what it means to be a
Yeah.
leader. It's
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, it's removing roadblocks. If there's one thing that I like to do, it's I like to see, I like to move things out of the way so that everybody else can be successful. Because that's
Absolutely.
whether it's for me, whether that's getting funding to buy a new instrument or helping to get a team together to make a new process, maybe I'm convincing somebody from another division to collaborate on something. It's all those things. I want to do those things, that the ideas my team brings me to help them be successful with their ideas. Because what I've learned as I get further in my career, everybody else's ideas seem to be better than mine anymore. It's like I have thoughts, I bring them to the team. They're like, yeah, we thought about that, but what do you think about doing it this way? I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's
right.
let me help you make that happen.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yep.
There's a lot of
And
new
I love
ways,
that.
a lot of new ways of thinking going on these days that,
Yeah.
we didn't, it wasn't something that we actually had and embraced earlier on in our careers.
Yep. So,
But,
so I love that. I love that.
Yeah, one of the things that Simon Sinek talks about in good leadership is, you're in a room and there's ideas being expressed. As the leader, be the last one to talk.
Yeah.
So you're not influencing, kind of their ideas.
Right.
You hear all the ideas, and then you kind of make some input, and maybe your idea wasn't that good to begin with, so you don't have to even go there. So, but I think that servant leadership, it's so key to building trust and to motivating people in the right way. But I'm curious, you've been in leadership a long time. You've done some things obviously really well, but what are some of the hard lessons that you learned along the way?
I think that the absolute hardest lesson is when you have to face the difficult realities that you don't have the right match of anywhere within your organization between somebody's individual passion and desire and motivations, and what it is the business needs. And I say it that way because, again, it's back to why did we name the company we did? It's because we believe in firmly, deeply, and it's not unique. Everybody, I think, who's a leader understands this. When you find the alignment of an individual's passion in what they want to achieve personally or do, or the people they want to do it with, everybody has a different reason that drives them. When you find that and it matches what it is the business needs and is doing and is trying to accomplish, it's explosive, right? I mean, and do that like with everybody. If you could actually achieve such a thing, it's just absolutely remarkable to see what could happen as a result of that. And again, leaders don't want to push, they want to motivate and inspire. And you don't have to do very much of that because these people, they're already loving what they're doing. But the hard thing is when you come to the reality that it's just not the right match. And early in my career, I remember the first time I had to deal with that. I had a boss, name was Tom Williams. He was my mentor. He's really ignited my career. And he said, look, he said, I know it's difficult, but, we have 150, we're a smaller company, 150 other people. and this is not working. And if we don't take action, there's another 149 people who are going to have to pay the price for us not doing the hard things we need to do. And it stuck with me. And he also said, and I've learned this over my career, that after it happens, it ends up being better for everybody because the individual themselves finds a better home, a better match. You know, they're happier. Their company they're working for, the people they're working with are happier. It's just better all around. But just getting over that decision point and the act of having to do it is to this day, I consider to be one of the most difficult things. And it's exacerbated when doing it in a small company like ours. The smaller the company, the harder it is because everybody feels almost like family. And so anyway, that's
for sure.
No, that's
sure.
It's powerful. I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely.
What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking to make a significant impact in the healthcare and life sciences industry?
Wow, that's my mind went in like 50 different directions on that question, because I think that I think that there is first of all, I think it's important first and foremost to know what is their individual strength and expertise in order to be able to harness that. Because I could talk about, well, yeah, this is an area it needs, or this area needs, but back to the previous conversation. If somebody has an enormous amount of expertise in a particular area and it aligns with an area within life science and healthcare, then go chase it, right? Like that's the thing to focus on, to be perfectly honest, because because otherwise you're going to be trying to accomplish something that the most important person, the entrepreneur, is not tooled to be able to be impactful on. So, I mean, I think that is probably the most important piece of it. There's these other elements to, how do you break in and how do you start to make an impact? And, for anyone who's thinking about entrepreneurship and like us, Chad, we worked in, big companies. And at PRA, I couldn't stop my phone from ringing. I couldn't stop emails from coming in. Everybody wanted to sell to me. And if I called, boom, they'd answer the phone in a heartbeat. Now, Chuck who? Right? It's very fascinating because, and it's not, I'm not saying anything negative about it, but, and you have to, I have another, same guy, Tom Williams. He left the industry and started a more of a labor-oriented type of company. It was called the Pop-A-Lock business, and which is really pop-a-lock. And you go, it's roadside assistance and locksmith and all of this. This guy, I mean, he was brilliant, right? He was a great leader. He was brilliant. And I remember him telling me, like all of a sudden, people didn't quite treat him the way he's used to being treated, right? It's like, oh, this is the guy who's changing my tire, as a small entrepreneur. And it's like very awakening. And so I think anyone, if you're a serial entrepreneur, you understand this. But if you come from big corporations like we had, holding executive level roles, and everybody is going to wants to listen to you, be prepared, because the phone, you could be calling a lot, you could be sending messages, but don't expect responses the way you used to get them. So.
Yeah, it's so true. And and as I went through my career, and my title changed from manager to director to VP to EVP. You see on LinkedIn, you see a direct correlation to the amount of spam you get and calls you get and emails you get. It's you definitely get targeted in that way. It's
well, I think those titles coupled with PRA Health Sciences, right? Or
exactly.
Stick Google on that, or Apple on that. People are gonna.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Right? I mean, me neither. But yes, it is very interesting to see.
And
I
that's
think
why the executives at those companies don't read their own email. Because they can't.
They can't, exactly.
How could you?
Exactly.
They probably have some, some shadow email address that nobody else, only a few people know. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I'll leave two other, pieces of advice for anyone who wants to get into doing this. The first is, and I learned this even before I started Zealic. It's got to be for the passion. You have to be passionate about the cause if you're going to be an entrepreneur. A lot of people think it's about money, right? And the truth of the matter is, well, first of all, it isn't. Maybe someday it might be, but it isn't, right? And that won't bring success. Success has got to be the passion for the cause, right? And that's, I think, key for anyone who's thinking about this. And the other one is persistence, even in the face of, opposition of all sorts. You cannot give up. You cannot stop. You got to keep on driving to what you believe is the best thing for, the business and the cause that you're trying to do. It's hard when there's plenty of things fighting against you as a bootstrapped entrepreneur, having to make payroll for a bunch of people as a commitment every single month. It is not negotiable. All right. And holding on to those threads. You better have persistence and perseverance through all of that. But it's a lot of fun. It's so much
Chuck,
fun.
Chuck, you can probably afford to skip a paycheck, but probably not a lot of people in your team can.
That's right.
And that's the reality.
Exactly.
Those families are depending on you and the success of the business you lead.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And I hold that near and dear to my heart. And in every month when we run payroll, to be certain that, and if I have to go beyond that, reach into my own bank account on occasion to cover it, I will do it because, I know they work hard for our success and their families deserve it. So,
yeah.
Excellent. So Chuck, how can people find you and reach you?
How can they find me and reach me? Well, you can, you can go on LinkedIn and find me there. You can, call me, although no one answers phones anymore. So probably text me. I have every single possible social media channel from Viber to Instagram to Telegram, email at chuck.piccirillo@zealichelp.com. And if you're in Krakow, well, look me up and we go have a beer. And if you're in Raleigh, do the same because I love meeting people. It's one of the most enjoyable parts of what I do is just meeting people, every day, new people and hearing about their stories and their life. And if something comes of it from a business perspective, great. And if not, it just enriches both of our lives. So.
Absolutely. Oh, that's great. Well, I appreciate
That's exactly what I'm going to do in a couple of weeks, Chuck, is come meet
right.
up with you for beer in Raleigh.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly.
So,
in fact, that's how I discovered you were in Raleigh and not still in Kansas City, right? I mean, it was that exactly.
Yeah.
It was funny.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. Well, and I'm going to have to find my way to Kansas City. So, Greg, we can do
please
the same.
do. Yeah, no, treat you to some barbecue. We'll have a good time.
Oh, awesome. Love it.
Excellent. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for coming on the show with us today, sharing all your experiences and allowing us to get to know you. It's definitely been a privilege and it's been a fun conversation. We do appreciate that.
Yeah, same here. Well, thank you very much for inviting me and I wish you best of luck with the podcast. I'll be sure to be watching future ones.
And definitely, folks, go and visit the show notes, check out the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation and see what they're all about. It's something near and dear to Chuck's heart, and we'll see you soon.